the biggest thing you can do for yourself is get clear on who you are and looking at what you are inspired and excited and passionate about to gift and provide value to the organization you're in, then you are one of those people that are clear on when you walk in every morning. And as a result of that, you have a commitment to yourself where you're not living life by everybody else's agenda.
Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. In this show, I will introduce you to ideas, concepts, and mindsets that will open your mind to a new world of well-being and personal life growth. Through eye-opening interviews, we elevate people in the world doing amazing things for humanity and share insights that will shift you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate version of you. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Things You Can't Unhear. Thank you again for tuning in on this episode. Now, today we are going to be talking about finding clarity in our lives and determining our personal key values so that we can begin to introduce them into our work lives to create a ripple effect to our colleagues and our teams. Madisen Harper joins me today on the show to jump into this topic further and share her knowledge with us. Madisen is the international bestselling author of the book limitLESS, which highlights 10 energy accelerators to access personal infinite potential. She also co-authored Wake Up, Live the Life You Love, Living in the Now, and was the recipient of the Telstra Director's Choice Award for 2 years running. Madisen is also the host of the Reality Alchemist podcast. She has a PhD in clinical hypnotherapy and guides organizations and individuals on how to consciously create change and transformation. In this episode, we will discuss how to work through inspiration, how to find our personal superpowers, explore rituals around self-nourishment. We'll also discuss what is the cause of the commonly referred to corporate burnout and how we can avoid it in our lives. And we'll also talk about how to bring our personal development tools into our leadership skills and how we can determine the main pillars to create engaged employees. So welcome, Madisen, to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Maritza. I am super excited to connect with you and your listeners.
Thank you so much. That's a very interesting and mysterious accent. Where did you grow up?
I call it my international accent because I actually was born in Melbourne and live in Sydney now. So I am not betrothed into my house at 8 p.m. every night. So I'm very fortunate in that respect. But when I was 5, I went and moved to Canada with my parents, obviously. And I believe that wherever you're socialized, you keep the accent. So for example, my mother, she never lost her Australian accent. So yeah, I call it my international accent.
So I've done a lot of research into your background. You're obviously a student of life and love to continue to learn. Can you tell us a little bit about you and your career background and all of the studies that you've undertaken in your life?
Gosh, you know what? I personally believe that we don't stop learning until the day we die. I actually had no intention of doing this work. I, many years ago, would have thought that it was all a bit hoo-ha and airy-fairy, but the universe has its own agenda. So, and I found that it's best to align with it. Otherwise, it is very challenging. So my background is in marketing. I started off working in marketing for Speakers Bureau Publishing, a whole bunch of tech companies. So that's how I started off. And I have to say, I am infinitely grateful for that marketing experience, for, probably personally, and your listeners probably know, like, you can't sell a secret, right? So it's really important that we do know how to amplify what we want to get out there. So background in marketing. Then I worked in some project management and change management. And it was a change management component that really made me understand that no matter what change any organization wants to do, it could be a technology change or a system change, it all comes down to people. So that's when I started on this journey. And of course, everything started with me. So I had my own personal journey. When I was about 30, I started a business with one of my best friends, and it was all about plus size clothing, and we did it online. We did it before kind of online was online, and what I discovered from that was I had a passion around that personal development side, but also very inspired to get messages out there on body image and self-esteem. So we ran that business for a few years, but it got to the stage where we were paying everybody else other than ourselves. And it was kind of like, I have this desire in life that whatever is happening, I want to make sure I tie it up in a nice bow. So I made sure that we did everything that we could to make sure that business worked, because I thought I didn't want to be sitting in a cubicle in some future stage going, if only I had. So that's been a big thing for me. It was a huge lesson, and it was actually how I embarked on this journey.
Very, very interesting. I think regrets are a big part of a lot of our lives, and you can go through the motions for such a long time and then get to the end of what you thought you were happy doing, and then you're like, not serving me. I have a life full of regrets. And that's probably one of the things that you hear people who have been unwell and what they've endured during their time of being unwell, and it's all about life's regrets, and not having them was the biggest thing. Never have regrets. So I suppose that brings us to the work that you do and the people that you engage with, and the way that you help them through living a life with no regrets.
Yes.
You did say earlier that you can see people's essence. So having done a few sessions with you myself, I find it quite intriguing that you can see that and have that sort of guided intuition. Would you call that, I know you work with people to find their superpower. Would you call that your superpower?
I would definitely say that is one of them. I actually call them quantum powers, right? So I think it's really tapping into that quantum realm, and I believe anyone can do it. We've just got to get rid of all that monkey mind that's happening, because we can't actually tap into ourselves, let alone be a gift to anyone else, if we are constantly thinking. And we know that, it's hard to create if we don't have a blank slate. Where can the inspiration come through? And I do really believe in working through inspiration now instead of perspiration. And that was a big shift for me, because I am one of these people that will work nonstop till 4:00 in the morning. But I ended up having not a mental breakdown, but a physical breakdown because of my adrenals. And it was the universe, or whatever you believe in, as a way of saying you need to slow down and do things differently. So it was a huge wake-up call for me, but it was very uncomfortable, because I thought if I stopped, I get stuck. But that is why.
That resonates.
Yeah, right. It's kind of like, and I've realized that, and especially for you and your women listeners, we are meant to be, our energy is meant to be in flow, and everything in our society says do, and people talk about being busy all the time, and I do not wear the busy badge of honor in any respect. I actually realized when I stopped, and it was a challenge to actually say, okay, I'm going to sit and see what comes to me, what truly inspires me, not what the mind says, but what the heart says. And ever since I've done that, it's all around congruence for me. If you are not internally congruent, then nothing that is in your life is really satisfying or fulfilling. And I know a lot of successful people, but there's a huge difference to me between success and fulfillment.
So when you say you'll surrender to this specific mindset,
Yeah.
you say, I'm going to give myself 30 days to surrender here and just stand back and see what happens. I think for motivated people like yourself, it can be hard to just step back and do nothing. So I've heard Oprah speak about this before. She says, arm yourself with all the tools, do everything you can do, and then sit back and watch it all unfold. Don't just sit there and wait for the phone to ring and have that excuse.
No.
But obviously do your work and then surrender. Is that the process that you recommend?
Well, what I recommend is, first of all, and what you said is very common, and I started this way, like within 30 days. I felt like that in order to be limitless, I had to release the limitations. I had to turn routines into rituals of self-nourishment, but also self-honoring. It was a huge difference. But I will, put out the disclaimer and warning, it is uncomfortable. So what I literally had to do was wake up every morning, and I invite you and your listeners to do this, and ask yourself, what do I feel like doing right now? Not today, but right now. And you know what? It is very challenging because I don't know if you can relate to this or anyone else. I have had adrenal stress for decades. And when I wake up in the morning, I literally feel like the starting gun is going off. And then I've got to race through my day. And it took a really conscious decision to set some rituals in place that really set me up for the day, because people go, oh, I don't have time to do this. I've got to get to work, or I've got to go and do work. But what I've noticed and witnessed for myself and many very successful people, including best-selling authors on the New York Times list that I've spoken to, you really have to honor what is most aligned with you. The problem is most people don't know who they are or what they are aligned with.
Who am I?
Who am I? Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about how you deal with the corporate world, because it seems so often that people in the corporate lifestyle have this burnout. This corporate structure causes so much burnout within so many people.
Yes.
Why do you think that is? Obviously, you've worked in the corporate industry for many years, so may have experienced it yourself. But what is it about that corporate structure that causes this burnout in your perception?
Yeah. So I really believe that we teach people how to treat us. And the biggest thing you can do for yourself is get clear on who you are. As soon as you know what your why is, and people's whys are often a bit different from when they work with me, your values, not somebody else's values. The first time I did my values, I realized they were my parents' values, because I'm like, these don't make sense. And looking at what you are inspired and excited and passionate about to gift and provide value to the organization you're in, then you are one of those people that are clear on when you walk in every morning. And as a result of that, you have a commitment to yourself where you're not living life by everybody else's agenda. And what I've discovered is that when you do that, and you set that up and you talk to, I have clients, people might have employers, whatever it is, run their own business. They really value that, because you are so clear and confident that you are able to courageously create alchemy in their businesses. So I find that the burnout is because we allow it. And I always joke that I say to people, do not role model me as a consultant, because I'm like a consultant behaving badly. I know how my energy works. I'm a night person. They also understand that, if I'm doing a keynote or running a session or doing back-to-back coaching or doing a change or transformation initiative within their business strategy, I know when my energy is done. And they honor that. So sometimes I say to clients, you know what, I'm done. I need to go home and have a nap. But then, and they go, you do that. Who says that? But you've got to be clear and confident, know who you are, be explicit in how you are going to express your value. And oh my gosh, they treat you like a rock star. So we allow the burnout to happen.
So what fuels you then in those situations when you're in front of people and helping guide them?
Well, I actually am aligned with my passionate purpose. And I was very fortunate to turn my hobby, which was that personal development side, into my profession. And it was interesting for those people who are looking to pivot in a new direction. People often ask me, well, how did it happen? I leaned into it. I just started. So even though I might have been in a marketing manager's position, I, at the time, it was unconscious. I was really fusing the personal development side into everything I was doing. So I would be a manager of a team. So I would make sure that I really checked in with them, honored them, looked at what really excited them. So in one instance, I was speaking to a guy who was in my team, and he told me he really loves setting up events. So I said, okay, let's do a book club. And he set up this whole book club. And we actually looked at Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So I really focus on leveraging people's passions and strengths. So I think it's important. We have to look at people as people and not just productivity enablers, because what I've discovered is that if people want to go faster, especially in this day and age, because I work a lot with tech companies, they go, we have to deliver faster. We have to deliver faster. And I'm like, do not look to your systems or, an agile way of working or whatever it is. You've got to start with the people. And if you want to go faster, engagement is the key. And so we focus on like the 3 pillars of engagement.
So when you say the 3 pillars of engagement, what are they? I'd love to hear what they are and talk us through that.
Yeah. So basically, if your team member is engaged or anybody in your life is engaged, you're going to find that they're about 70% more productive. So, and you get 2 or 3 times more innovation. So the engagement pillars are all about creating work that is meaningful and matters to those around you. So first of all, you got to ask them, right? What motivates you at work? And it's a question, people just don't ask. And I find that, especially in corporate, they're so busy doing the work that, that is like 90% of their focus. And if you're a senior leader or, a team leader, it's actually, you've got to spend 70% of the time developing your people, because then that will create the productivity. So the first one is finding out what is meaningful and matters, and just ask people. Yeah. The things that I find are most common, from all the data that I've had come through, are basically doing something they're passionate about. The next one is that it's aligned to the work that they're doing. And they also see how the work that they're doing is contributing to an end result. So it might be the customer experience, it might be, the production of a book or an app or whatever it is. So that's a huge one. And the other one is basically being recognized for what, value that they're contributing. And so that's one. Number 2 is feedback. Now, most people, if somebody says the words, let's see how you guys feel when I say, so I just want to give you some feedback.
Nervous,
right? We feel like we're being called into the principal's office.
That's right.
And feedback is not our foe. It's only when we are not consistently giving feedback. So I really believe in that kind of emotional feedback bank account. And it's about giving constant positive feedback. And also when there is something that you want to invite them to improve or grow in, that it's done in a really gracious way. But because you've got that really balanced feedback, people are open to it. So feedback is huge. It actually can increase productivity by something like 3 times. And the third thing that is part of that engagement trifecta is around coaching and developing. And I know for a fact when I deal with people and I say, so when you do your one-on-ones with your director or your lead, what are you talking about? And they're like, oh, we're talking about the work that has to be done this week. And I say, okay, do you have a professional development plan? Kind of. Do you have a personal development plan? No, not at all. that's what we should be focusing on. The leaders of the future are pretty much influencers. And I'm not talking Instagram influencer. You are really responsible for the ripple effect that you could create. And I can tell what a team is going to be like, their attitudes, their behaviors, just by talking to the leader.
A lot of people who put into leadership positions haven't had no training into leadership, and it's so evident. I've seen that in many companies that I've worked in, including myself. I was put into a leadership position with no leadership background, and I had to learn on the job how to do it. And you learn pretty quickly when you're faced with constant challenges from staff and different issues that arise. So I think when leaders put the time in to develop that skill on their own behalf, I think that's when you're going to see people shine as much as possible. So what are some common themes you see coming up within corporations and with your clients?
So the biggest shift I've noticed, which is exciting for me, is I do a lot of leadership, but also group sessions, because I believe that, you know, it's infused throughout the organization, right? So I do a lot of group coaching as well, which is kind of rare. And what I'm really witnessing is people are craving this. They are really wanting more out of life. And as I'm watching the millennials, and I don't like to put people in boxes, but just in terms of the statistics, it's the first time we have 5 generations in the workforce, and the millennials are the biggest cohort, and they want a life that is meaningful and matters. And that's why there is that essence of depression in that age group, because they want more out of life. So I love when I go in and I'm speaking to CEOs, and then I'm talking to graduates, and I'm often working in big companies, and they're saying to me, I'm so glad I met you, because I feel like I've been swallowed up by the culture of this company. So that is a huge thing. I've noticed that they're really open to the personal development side and really looking at what we talked about up front, which is their values and their why and how they want to navigate the world and what they want to bring to the world, but they don't have the clarity. So that's probably the main thing. The other thing is that it's all about leadership attributes. So, and it's regardless of title. So the leadership and accountability attributes are probably your biggest differentiators in the workforce. And it's very much that personal mastery. So when I looked at what makes amazing leaders and what the leaders of the future look like, the number one focus was personal mastery, knowing themselves first so that they can create that awesome ripple effect and invite others to do something similar. So those are probably the biggest things. And mindfulness. I've done so many mindfulness kind of initiatives within that and within organizations. And the other thing I'm probably most passionate about is high performance. And a lot of companies talk about high performance, but I basically see it as like a unicorn, right? We'd all love it, but does it really exist? So I do a lot with high performance, using that whole clarity and then the confidence and then the courage. And it's so fulfilling.
I think it's important that we put this emphasis onto leadership, because people who do the self-work and really dig into finding themselves and a life filled with purpose, they tend to break away from the corporate structure very, very often. And we can't have everyone breaking away from the corporate structure and going off on their own, because we need the economy to run in this way. So I love that there's still this emphasis that you're putting into corporations and companies and employees and staff to help ignite passion within the place that they are currently at. Not everyone needs to leave the corporate lifestyle.
And I think, and that's a great point, because people have left because their values and their why aren't aligned, right? So therefore they go, oh, I can't do it within this beast. But I work with huge companies, 20, 30, 40,000 people. It is totally possible. And if you are a leader and you are not focusing on your own personal mastery and developing your team members for at least 70% of your time, you don't deserve your paycheck. You really don't.
Does it help when, and I know more businesses and more companies are doing that these days, really getting clear on their vision and their mission? So when there's that clear directive of what we are trying to achieve in 10, 15 years time, we know why we're walking through the door every day. We know why we're coming to work. We know why we're contributing to this organization. Is that an area that you focus on too, is helping people get clear on that, or find the pathway towards that?
Yes. There's something I run with an organization called Vision to KPIs. And it's bringing in a whole lot of the things that we just talked about. So making sure that the company vision is something that is inspiring, not just to the head, but like you feel proud, right? And then looking at the vision and then translating it into the strategic pillars of the organization. It might be, epic customer experience or human experience, which is the new word for employee experience. Whatever it is, the vision has to be directly linked to the strategy. And then as we go down into the teams that are actually enabling that, we have to link it to their KPIs. And as I said up front, that is the first pillar of creating engagement, is linking it all together. And I've got to say that a lot of people will go, well, they're really focused on their technical skills. And as you said, Marissa, you were given a management or a direct, a leadership role. And most people, it's because they're really good at the job they do, right? So they get promoted. And that's called the PETA principle, where people are promoted on their merit, but it doesn't mean that they're great leaders. Just because I am on the plane doesn't mean I can pilot the plane, right?
It's a frightening analogy when you think of it like that.
It is. So we have to be serious about that. And it's even talking to recruiters, they're actually saying, even within tech companies, that they're going, please get out there. We need more leaders. We need less tech people and more leaders, because that is what's going to drive your business. So that vision to KPIs is very much around that. And even in places like Google, they found that to be successful, only 15% is due to your technical issues, the IQ. Everything else, 85%, is your EQ and how you operate in the world. Yes, exactly.
Is that something that companies are looking more into now? Do you think they're more open to exploring their EQ?
I think they're totally open to exploring it, but I feel like they're exploring it at a superficial level, right?
Ticking a box.
Yes, they're checking the box. And, I talk to some amazing people, and I will ask them, so what's your leadership? What value do you give to your organization? They can't answer me. I said, have you guys done leadership training? Yeah, we've done heaps of leadership training. Okay, great. So what are you contributing? This is beyond, I find a lot of leaders are managers. They're doing timesheets, they're doing the budgets, but to be a leader anywhere, and like I said, it doesn't have to be your title. You can do it anywhere. It is epically important that you take this really seriously. And with the EQ side of things, the emotional quotient side of things, yes, you need to know about yourself and how to deal with others, but you need to deep dive into yourself, because everything starts with you, everything.
Let's take our listeners on a little advice journey, let's call it. So say we've got someone here listening today who may have found themselves in a management position, in a leadership position, and they think they're doing okay, but they'd love to upskill a little bit and take some new steps, fresh steps to becoming a better leader.
Yes.
What can they start to do pretty much first thing tomorrow morning?
Okay, so if there's two practices, and this is probably not going to be the answer you expect. I believe, if there were two things that I would recommend, is start a gratitude practice and a mindfulness practice. And I actually don't even like the word mindfulness. I like heartfulness, because I am very mindful of what words mean. And I don't need my mind to be full. I need it to be empty. So I wanted to start a heartfulness practice. Now, why am I talking about those two things? Because, as I said before, of all the people I've met who are magnificently successful and fulfilled, those are the two things that are in their toolbox. And yeah, it's fascinating.
Would you do that with your staff or on a personal level or both?
So everything starts with you. Do it for yourself and then ripple effect out to your team. So one of the things that I love doing, and sometimes clients who have not met me and I've just joined a meeting, and at the end of the meeting, I'll say, so what are you guys grateful for today? And they're like, oh, but they actually think about it. You can infuse it into things, right? And sometimes at the end of team meetings, it's around what are you grateful for? And, even in the beginning of team meetings, it might be just like, guys, I know you've been busy all day. Let's just put our feet on the ground and have a nice big deep breath in. That's a heartfulness technique. You can infuse it. It is so simple. We just have to be aware. And I know also, even with feedback, it's a way of showing gratitude. So sometimes I tell clients, so what do you find really admirable about that person? Let's share it. And they are clamoring to give each other that positive feedback. And without a doubt, every single time at the end, they say, why don't we do this more often? And I'm like, yeah, why don't we? So you can do it yourself and then infuse.
Okay. So tomorrow morning, leaders,
yes,
managers, walk in and break out the conversation about gratitude with your staff. What else can they do?
So the other thing they can do is really look at what motivates them, what gets them out of bed in the morning. Because when we are aligned to that higher desire, or it doesn't even have to be purpose, because I do keynote sometimes and I start in the beginning and I say, I'm going to, at the end of this, tell you your purpose. And they're like, really? But really, our purpose is to be happy. Whatever fuels that is, being purposeful. And the saddest thing I've noticed is that most people do not know what makes them happy. So if they're going in, it's time to really start looking at themselves. So what excites them? When's the last time they were excited? I did a podcast on this. Can you remember, Maritza, when's the last time you were truly excited? Like, oh my gosh, so excited.
Yeah, when I explore new places and see it for the first time.
I mean, our life is supposed to be exciting and fun and easy. And even the challenges are exciting because it's an invitation from the universe to overcome a challenge. Like everything can be exciting. We don't have to wait to be happy in the future when we can be happy now. So it's really something that they need to look at their why. And I do take people through that process. I find sometimes when they say they do know their why, it's more of a mission statement of what they're going to do than how they're going to be. Look at their values, top 3 prioritized values. And I'm super tough on that because when you look at your life and something that's incongruent, it's usually because it's not aligned to your values. Then once you have those 2 aspects, you basically navigate your life that way. And you spoke before about the regrets, right? And how I like to use your why and your values is at the end of the day, you measure yourself against them. So at the end, so my why right now is that I'm exuberant, energetic expansion. So at the end of the day, I have to ask myself, did I enable that? Was I being that? And if I have been, I feel fulfilled. But also it releases the regrets. And also, did I live by my values today? So my values are love, freedom, and an abundance of self, health, and wealth. So I'm loving what we're doing now. I love that we have the freedom to do it in our, the time that we chose. And that abundance of self, health, and wealth. Well, the self, I did my rituals this morning. The health, I've honored my health by even setting up my vitamins so that they're there, for 3 days in advance. And the wealth, well, I just have to look around. I live in a beautiful home. I have beautiful people and, I've got money in the bank. So it's really around looking at that first. Once you know that, then do that with your team.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good idea is doing your one-on-ones with your team. And maybe I was a better leader than I thought I was because I would always ask my team members, what their biggest dreams and desires were in every one-on-one. And I would do it from the minute I interviewed them. So we would be on the same page and would have the same end goal for them and each other and the business. So if it didn't match up, I'd know where to place them. And sometimes people were a bit perplexed when I'd ask, what's your biggest dream? What's your biggest goal? Because they felt like they should say the role that they're interviewing for. But I really push them to go further than that and say, tell me the big dream and let's try and navigate a way towards that together. And you may be in this company for 2 years, you may be in it for 6 months. It is what it is, but let's try to make the most of this time together and grow together. So I think, that's a really great tool to do together. So when it comes to choosing values, do you have a process of how to do that and how to best discover what your own values are? Because I remember you saying before, when you first did your own personal values, they were actually your parents' values without you realizing. So how do we find what our true values are if we haven't really explored that within ourselves before?
Yes. So firstly, I want to honor you as a leader.
Oh, thanks.
Like, I bow down to you because you probably to this day, like I do to this day, get emails and notes from people saying, wow, I really flourished when I worked with you. Did you find that?
I'm still friends with all of them. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, that is what we want, truly connection, right? Interconnection and then connection with the world. So in relation to the values, and I'm happy to gift this to your audience if they send me an email at hello@madisenharper.com. I actually have a values playbook. And what you do is it's got a whole list of values and you go through and you circle all the ones that are resonating with you. And then you vote them off the island one by one until you have 3. And I find, and it's like quite a comprehensive list because, for some people, prosperity and abundance are synonyms. But for me, I felt abundance was something different to prosperity. To me, it was that abundance of self, health, and wealth. Prosperity, in my mind, was just financial. So it really makes you look at what is important to you. And then when you have those top 3, I get you to prioritize them. And the reason why I encourage people to prioritize their values is to help you make better decisions. So for example, mine is love, as I said, freedom, and abundance of self, health, and wealth. Now, if somebody said to me, Madisen, we've got the best opportunity for you. Like, you're going to make $1 quadrillion, but you're not going to see the light of day for like 5 years. Okay. And I'm like, oh, it sounds so exciting. I'm like, in the money, honey. But then I'm like, okay, freedom is above wealth in my top 3. So I know that without freedom, I have never reveled in the financial side of things. And I know I've learned, and I don't know if you can relate to this, that I, in my earlier years, did everything for money, everything. It's how I was brought up. I was, taught that, we strive to make money so that we can be safe and secure or whatever other need we're fulfilling. And every time I did it from money above freedom, oh my gosh, there was so much resistance with me. I didn't enjoy it. Even though I was somebody who made the best of every situation, it was that internal, I'd be driving places and crying, going to my company when I used to work full time because I just didn't want to do it. And I created it myself. So that's why it's really important to have them prioritized. And I'd say knowing your top 3 prioritized 80% of the times in your life, you can pretty much make phenomenal decisions based on what you need.
I've done mine recently with you, and mine were freedom, exploration, and love. And obviously right now with COVID-19, freedom and exploration are not happening very often right now. I've got a world map up in front of me. I look at it all the time. I'm desperate to go and explore the world. I'm feeling that real drive to see new things and experience new cultures. And obviously that can't happen. And the freedom side, I used to really value my alone time at home or at work. And now with a house full of people, again, I feel like that freedom has, and the inability to leave the house is another thing that's happening here in Victoria. As most people know, we're in big stage 4 lockdowns that has been going for a good 6 months almost. So it's been exhausting, but I know that they're my values. I know those things light me up. And I also know that we shouldn't be happy when, we should be happy now. And I know that you're nodding furiously because you taught me that. So how do I look at my values with these restrictions and be happy now? Talking for a friend.
Love it. So, and like COVID or not COVID, you know, this is what I'm finding with COVID. COVID is our invitation to see how comfortably we are sitting with ourselves and those around us. Those that are struggling the most usually don't like their own company, or it is really highlighting the fact that maybe they shouldn't be in the company that they have chosen today. So I invite people to really look at that and honor it. So in terms of freedom and things like that, I truly believe that we don't wait for COVID to end or to go on holidays. We have to create the state now. So like you, freedom is huge for me. So what I've noticed with freedom is that if I look at my schedule for the week and it's got too much in it, I get a little bit anxious because it's around freedom. It's not about doing stuff, it's around the freedom. So I have to make sure minute by minute and day by day, I am choosing things and making decisions aligned to that. So I will have to say no to things. That's a freedom. That's my freedom declaration, you know, and I'm not of any value if I'm not aligned to that. And, you know, I think with the COVID situation, and I know a lot of people are feeling this around the freedom side, is that it's like being on a diet. As soon as we say we're on a diet or we have to budget and there's restriction, all of a sudden we're like, I can't stand it anymore. Whereas before, so many people would be loving working from home, having the freedom to get up and not drive. But you know what? As soon as it's a self-imposed or, you know, environmentally imposed restriction, we go a little crazy, you know. And I talk about food like that as well, because as soon as I say I'm on a diet, I crave things that I never want to eat. You know, there's something within us on that. So I really invite everybody to look at, you know, if you are feeling challenged by these times, like what is it that is really activating you and pushing your buttons, because it's the way that the universe leaves clues on something that you could develop. So the being happy now, it's all about states, not stuff. That's the conundrum. So and we can learn a lot from marketing around this, right? If you look at a shampoo brand, they're not selling you, here's a plastic bottle and here's a whole bunch of liquid in it with chemicals in it. They're not selling you that. They're selling you shiny, sexy hair. So that's what we really want. So we're looking for the states. So you mentioned freedom, and then your second one was?
Exploration and love.
And love. Okay. So minute by minute, how can you cultivate love in your day-to-day? It's typically a choice. And I always say when people say to me, oh, what do you think? Or what do you, and I'm like, you choose. You choose in alignment with your why and your values. That's why it's so important. So for me, as you know, love is my number one. I am actually cultivating it right now. I'm loving this conversation. I am loving that you invited me to connect. I am loving that I get to connect with an amazing human being. Like I'm cultivating that right now. So it's day by day, you know, and you mentioned adventure. Okay. What does adventure give you? So how can you cultivate something new in your day-to-day? I mean, right now you're cultivating something new.
That's true. That's true. Talking to you, talking to someone fresh with new eyes and new ideals and new perspectives.
Right. So it's about being happy now. We need to cultivate the states now. And when we look at vibration, and it is a quantum physics thing, it is not just some airy-fairy thing, that, you know, like does attract like. So if you've got those vibrations of love and freedom and adventure and excitement within you, it doesn't matter what's happening in the outside world. You are full. You are like wired with goodness. But most people are wired with their fear, worry, and doubt and other people's expectations.
It is quite interesting how strong and overpowering negative thoughts can actually be. what is the psychology around that? Why are our negative thoughts got so much strength in them and our positive ones need to find that way out somehow in a more difficult way?
Yeah. I know you guys are going to get frustrated, but it's because we allow it.
Yeah.
And, when we're born, we're basically this pure essence. And that's why I love working with the younger generations, because there's an opportunity to really fortify themselves so that they don't get blown around by life as time goes on. And what happens is that we are the byproduct of our family, our culture, generations, our environment, society, the media, school, all of that. And sometimes when I'm doing keynotes, I say, I ask, who wants to know a secret? Do you want to know a secret?
Yes.
Okay. I have been institutionalized for years, but not how you may think. I've been institutionalized by, doing so many degrees and at university, because they teach you that you cannot make one statement without backing it up with someone else. So we don't realize that we're robbed of our truth and our expression throughout just life. So it is a choice. And the stinking thinking is something that we've got to monitor, but is a conscious thing you've got to watch. And if you can't see the negativity, I always invite people to do two things. One is if you, and this is a psychological term, if you feel icky inside, that is a good indicator that you are just having thoughts or creating a reality that is not optimum. And then the other thing I invite you to do is look around, because everything around you is a result of what you're putting out there. And I know sometimes people feel a bit uncomfortable with that, because they're like, well, I can't help the economy. I can't help what my boss is like. The company did it to me. But I also know that we are reality alchemists, and we get what we focus on. And I've got to say that in two major crises that have happened, one being COVID and the other was the global financial crisis, I actually flourished because I was one of the few people that did not allow those external factors to inhibit my introverse, my internal world.
You've done the work, you've got the tools, and now you know how to execute them in times of need. Yes. And that's, I think, what we all need more so than ever, of course, right now. And I think you've given us a lot of wonderful tools in order to equip us for that.
I'm Maritza Barone. Thank you for listening to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'd love to keep the conversation going. Let us know what you thought of this episode, and if something really profound came up for you that you want to share, let's talk about it. You can find me on Instagram at Things You Can't Unhear, or on my personal page at Maritza_Barone. And if someone you know will benefit from something that was said in this show, make sure you share it with them too. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and keep up to date with what's next. And if you can spare a few seconds, please rate and review the show on iTunes, just so other people can find us more easily and quickly. And as always, my friends, be happy, be healthy, be conscious, and be kind.